Today's episode is going to be Chip Stock Investor CSI Cybersecurity Edition. We're kicking off our cybersecurity earnings coverage with Fortinet, and for the first time in a few weeks, the market seemed actually happy about what Fortinet's earnings had to say. So let's figure out why. Fortinet has been a bit of a dud the last few years. However, it did rally this week after hours $65 on August 7th. Nick, after holding this stock in our portfolio for all these years, why do we still like Fortinet, even though it's kind of had some lackluster performance?
This is one that we've owned for a long time, going on 7, 8 years now. So it's done quite well by us. The last couple of years have been tough, though. We have had peak valuations at the tail end of the pandemic in 2021. Then the bear market hit. And we'll talk about what that did to Fortinet's business here momentarily. But through it all, the cybersecurity industry has continued to be one of those secular growth trends, not just within the IT world, but it's spread to every sector of the economy as more companies implement IT and especially the cloud. The need for more advanced cybersecurity protection has ratcheted up, and this has benefited Fortinet and its peers. Traditionally, this is a network hardware business. It harkens back to a day that predates cloud computing. And so a lot of what it does tends to be physical location, things like offices, storefronts, even factories. Some work in private data centers and public data centers as well, especially in recent years. And it's starting to encroach on some of those cloud-based software businesses that we like to talk about. And in especially the last 6 to 12 months, haven't been faring as well as the cybersecurity industry has started to go through a period of consolidation. We will talk more about that later on this earnings season. We're looking at you, CrowdStrike.
We talk mostly about business cybersecurity on Chip Stock Investor, but what about personal cybersecurity? Nick, how many spam calls do you get a day?
Well, on a good day, maybe just one, but it feels like they never end.
Same with me. I keep getting the same one that's promising me $50,000 in unclaimed car insurance. And better yet, the cruise that I've won, which I really feel like maybe that one I should check out.
Uh, Please don't. I understand you might want to go on vacation, but I don't think that's a good idea, to say the least. The real reason we get so many spam calls and messages and emails is there are a lot of big companies that just can't seem to keep our data safe. Just recently, there was that big AT&T breach where they revealed that nearly all of their customers' calls and text message records were exposed in a massive data breach. And that wasn't just a few months since they admitted that 70 million of their users' social security numbers ended up on the dark web. Those stolen logs contain a record of every number AT&T customers called or texted. So even if you don't use AT&T, if one of your friends or family members or an acquaintance using AT&T called or texted you, well, your number has also been exposed too.
That was a big breach. So the question that you may be asking yourself is, what can you do to protect yourself? Nick and I have started using Aura, which is the sponsor of today's video. Aura will alert me if they find any of our phone numbers or any other sensitive information has been compromised. They also give us fast fraud alerts if anyone tries to use that data to access our credit cards or bank accounts. Aura does a lot to keep us safe. We also get things like transaction monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, and identity theft insurance. We get all of this in one app at one affordable price.
Included in that package is an AI-powered call assistant that will pick up unknown calls on your behalf, screen them for spam or for scams, forwards the legitimate calls so we don't miss appointments or deliveries, emergencies, or people that really actually do need to talk to us. An interesting feature about this is also protects against harmful text messages by filtering out known spam numbers and also scanning links within the message for phishing threats.
We take security very seriously here at Chipstock Investor, and we aren't leaving ourselves vulnerable to data breaches. If you don't want to either, check out aura.com/chipstockinvestor and try your first 2 weeks for free. Link is in the description and here on the screen. As you mentioned, Nick, Fortinet has historically been in that hardware portion of security, but they have been branching out and becoming more well-rounded in what cybersecurity needs in security networking, security operations, and then that unified SASE.
Yeah, Fortinet is really proud of what it's been able to accomplish. And as I said earlier, we're still very happy with the company. The business itself has grown a bit detached from what you might think it's doing based solely on the stock price. But if we look at this graphic that Fortinet provides, it has maintained its leadership across its traditional businesses, network firewalls, software defined wide area networks, and of course, wired network protection as well. It is recognized as the leader by companies like Gartner that do research in tech and others as well. And then we're going to talk a bit more about SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, and Security Service Edge, SSE, those two magic quadrants on the right that Gartner puts together, where they have Fortinet listed as a challenger, not the leader. SASE, they have Palo Alto Networks listed as the leader, and an SSE, which is a subset of SASE. There's a private company called Netscope, as well as, again, Palo Alto Networks and Zscaler that are listed as the leaders there. But Fortinet doing a lot of hard work right now that shows up in the financials to narrow the lead with those leaders in SASE and SSE.
With all the changes in the landscape of the internet and enterprise businesses, in AI, you need to have more cybersecurity convergence where secure networking is provided for all of these different types of areas that businesses need covered, starting with the hardware that's in place as well as the connectivity.
Yeah, in recent videos and in some of our threads that we've been doing over on our Discord channel, there's been this reemergence of an old quote from Sun Microsystems about the network being the computer. And it's interesting that this is a similar thing that Fortinet has been saying all along, betting the security itself within the network. A lot of computing these days is starting to get embedded directly in the network versus a network just simply handling the transfer of data between point A and point B. Same happening with cybersecurity, embedding the security directly into that network, the transfer of data itself. But as we said, because Fortinet is historically a hardware, a product centric business, since the end of 2022, things have gotten especially choppy for this business.
Yes, it has. And that's primarily because of that cloud and enterprise segment of the market. The last peak for that was in late 2022 after the pandemic, when everyone was stuck at home. Businesses were increasing their cybersecurity products. And the bottom came in late 2023. But the good news is we're just at the start of a new growth cycle for cloud and enterprise spending from some of these large businesses. We'll talk a little bit more about this slide when we show you Fortinet's financials, but you may recognize this from our on semiconductor episode that we had recently. What we want to happen is a straight up or a very steep inclined arrow up and to the right when it comes to recovery. But really what's happening is more of an L-shaped recovery.
And here it is. You can see that in Fortinet's total revenue. It has definitely slowed down from the peak, low 30% year over year growth there at the tail end of 2022, early 2023. And the reason for that overall slowdown, you can see in the next line down, products, hardware. That old hardware centric network computing revenue has slipped into year over year decline for the last few quarters, for going on a year now. And so, just as Casey was saying, what we as investors have been hoping to see is a very quick snapback, a very quick recovery in this business. We are starting to see that recovery, though. You can see in Q2 2024 that was just reported, the year over year decline in product sales was far, far less in the last two previous quarters, just about 4% down year over year. But on a sequential basis, it does appear that Q1, first quarter of this year, was the bottom at about 410 million. Big sequential increase to over 450 million in Q2.
Where we do see the growth, however, is in the service revenue. In this most recent quarter, you can see the service revenue came in at 982 million, up sequentially and up significantly year over year. The year over year change for this most recent quarter was nearly 20%. So not at the same pace as it has been, but still a very solid rate of growth.
Absolutely, especially when you consider that this is a unique business. Fortinet's services, which for other companies you might think of as the software as a service, SaaS business, recurring revenue, software revenue. When you think about the fact that Fortinet's services tend to be packaged together with the product sales, it really speaks to the resilience of the business. They tend to get that hardware installed in their customers' network. And then over time, the service revenue component gets turned on gradually. That's what has helped keep Fortinet overall a resilient growth play, even though the product sales have been in decline for a year now.
And the cash flows aren't too shabby either. You can see there at the top, GAAP net income has steadily increased. The most recent quarter, 380 million, up from 300 million in Q1 and up 43% year over year. The free cash flow, when you drop your eyes down to that line, you can see it's been pretty lumpy, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that Fortinet has been spending on expanding into those other areas of the cybersecurity space.
And that, of course, is that SASE solution, Secure Access Service Edge. This is a newer product for Fortinet. It's been introducing this to a lot of its existing customers, which tend to be smaller and mid-sized businesses. And one of the beautiful things about Fortinet is that unified operating system. As we often talk about, this business has been primarily built organically, in-house development. And so it has this unified operating system, FortiOS, across all of its different products. And that differs significantly from a lot of its competitors, including Palo Alto Networks, listed just to the right, Checkpoint, Cisco, HPE, even Zscaler on the far right. Fortinet believes that this is one of its primary differentiating factors when it goes to market with this new SASE solution.
Maybe you could just explain what we mean when we say SASE.
Yeah, again, SASE is an acronym, Secure Access Service Edge. It is a term that was coined by Gartner. The technology behind it, very much obviously built by the cybersecurity industry. And it's more convergence, more platformization, I guess you could say, as we've covered in recent months when talking about Palo Alto Networks and some of the other big cyber platforms, is taking lots of different services, both some of the old classic network security services and also some of the new cloud-based services and software-based cybersecurity services, and offering all of it in one convenient package so that a company gets coverage for everything that it has, which is really important, especially when you think about businesses migrating to the cloud, maybe becoming more of an IT-centric business than they ever have been in the past. They're probably not all in on the cloud. In fact, a lot of these businesses, it's going to be impossible for them to be a 100% cloud-based business because they have existing physical footprints. Maybe they have a storefront somewhere or some sort of branch office where employees reside. In addition to that, some of those employees may work from home. How do you provide coverage for all of those myriad of applications? That's where this unified SASE service comes in. It's a way to provide coverage for everything a business like this needs.
Fortinet also released news of a partnership with Google in order to help them expand their presence in the cybersecurity marketplace. Traditionally, because they are a hardware business, Fortinet did not have a large presence in data centers. And so by teaming up with Google Cloud, they're able to expand their points of presence in these data centers and enabling them to get cybersecurity closer to the end user.
Yeah, and this deal that was announced late in 2023 is one of the reason for those lumpy cash flows that you mentioned, Casey. So a lot of investors are probably not their fault, misled a bit, I guess you could say, by some cybersecurity and cloud businesses that love to downplay the importance of hardware. But if you want to build a service like this, you actually do have to have hardware. You have to go purchase hardware and you have to go install it in a data center somewhere. So it could be your own data center. More likely, though, for all of these cybersecurity companies, it means renting data center space from a hyperscaler like Google Cloud. So that's the reason for the lower free cash flow as of late. It's because of higher capital expenditures as Fortinet installs some of its server equipment in these points of presence around the world.
Fortinet has made a couple of acquisitions very recently. They completed the acquisition of Lacework, which is a AI-driven cloud-native application protection platform. Lacework was kind of a unicorn type company. They had a great run during the pandemic, but then collapsed a bit. And so Fortinet most likely got this for a song. We won't know exactly how much they paid for it until next quarter when they release their cash flow statements. The second one is this Next DLP, and that's for a cloud native software as a service data protection platform and an AI machine learning based anomaly detection and classification company.
Yep. Both of these ultimately are going to feed into Fortinet's software and services business. It helps strengthen that overall SASE service that they are going to market with, still in the very early stages of that. And so here we go back to the original ugly looking chart. The last 3 years, flat performance, not great, not really what you want to see. However, because the business itself has actually continued to grow throughout this period, and more importantly, profitability has continued to grow during this period. This is what we can call like a long, slow burn stock correction. The flattish stock price for 3 years doesn't really look like a crash, but after 3 years of flat performance, but the business continuing to grow its profitability, we inevitably got the correction that was needed in the valuation.
I completely agree, Nick. The valuation on Fortinet has gotten quite appealing. The price to earnings is at 36 and price to free cash flow 25. Fortinet stock is as cheap as it has been in the last 3 years right now. We have a full position in Fortinet stock. And despite these lovely looking valuations, we're not going to be adding anything to our portfolio at the time, but this may be a good entry point or time to add to your position if you're looking to increase your portfolio holdings in Fortinet.
And I guess it's probably worth saying the valuation is as cheap as it's been in quite some time. I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say that it's cheap and outright value stock. A lot of that is going to depend on the pace of recovery for that hardware business and management's ability to upsell that unified SASE service as it picks up some new customers and also migrates some existing customers over to that. That said, the outlook for Q3 2024 calls for much the same, about 11% year over year growth at the midpoint for revenue. And probably, I think, safe to assume management is going to be trying really hard to continue keeping those profit margins stable or on the rise in the next few years. We should see that come to fruition, especially as they complete the build out of that SASE network. So again, I'm not going to say this is a value. However, it certainly could be if Fortinet turns the corner on this bear market and returns to growth on all fronts. It appears that they are definitely headed that direction, though. So there could be some upside in this business. And of course, historically, this is also a fantastic company at returning excess cash to shareholders, primarily through lots of stock buybacks. So keep an eye out for that as well. This is one of our top cybersecurity holdings, along with Palo Alto Networks, for a reason. We are very happy to continue being patient.
We have much more coming your way. Make sure you've subscribed to the channel. Check out our Semiconductor Insider. It's just $5 a month. You can Get that membership on Ko-fi or here on YouTube. Gets you access to live Q&As, all of our video notes, exclusives, you name it, we've got it over on our Discord channel. Check out our affiliate link for Aura. Our personal security is just as important as cybersecurity for all of these big businesses. We'll see you again soon at Chipstock Investor.